Picture this: a corrupt cop, drunk on power, plants drugs on an innocent black man, thinking he's just another easy target. But this time, he's picked the wrong manner. Brilliant ex-CIA operative, with a vendetta and the skills to turn the hunter into the hunted. Buckle up for racist cop plants. Drugs on the wrong black man. He just made the single worst mistake of his life. A heart-pounding tale of justice, betrayal, and redemption that'll keep you glued to every word. Don't miss out. Now to dive into this gripping story and join thousands across the USA and UK who can't get enough of these unforgettable narratives. Racist cop plants, drugs on the wrong black man, he just made the single worst mistake of his life. The rain-slicked streets of Baltimore glistened under the sodium glow of streetlights, casting long jagged shadows across the cracked pavement of West Fayette Street. It was just past midnight, and the air carried the sharp bite of early autumn, mixed with the faint temps of exhaust and despair that clung to this part of the city like a second skin. Marcus Kane walked with purpose, his boots thudding rhythmically against the sidewalk, his breath visible in the chilly air. At 38, Marcus was an imposing figure 6'2", broad-shouldered, with a quiet intensity in his dark eyes that made people instinctively step out of his way. He wore a simple black hoodie and jeans, blending into the night, but there was nothing ordinary about him. Marcus Kane was a man who'd seen the world's darkest corners, from covert ops in Kabul to clandestine missions in Bogota. A former CIA operative, he'd left the agency 3 years ago after a mission went south, leaving scars both physical and otherwise that he carried in silence. Now, he was back in his hometown, trying to rebuild a life, running a small community center for at-risk youth, teaching them how to navigate a world that too often saw them as targets. Tonight, Marcus was on his way home from the center, his mind heavy with thoughts of a kid named Jamal, a 16-year-old who'd just confided in him about wanting to escape the pull of the streets. Marcus had promised to help, to be there, because he knew what it was like to feel the world closing in. He didn't notice the patrol car idling at the corner of North Carey Street, its headlights dimmed, or the pair of eyes watching him from inside. Officer Daniel Hargrove, a 10-year veteran of the Baltimore PD, leaned back in his seat, his fingers drumming on the steering wheel. Hargrove was a man who thrived on control, a cop who'd built a reputation for cleaning up the streets by any means necessary. To him, Marcus was just another black man in a hoodie, another statistic to pad his arrest record. Hargrove's lips curled into a smirk as he reached into his glove compartment and pulled out a small plastic baggie filled with white powder. He'd done this before, too many times to count. Plant the drugs, make the arrest, and let the system do the rest. It was a game he played well, and in his mind, men like Marcus were born to lose. As Marcus crossed the street, Hargrove flicked on his siren, a short, sharp wail that cut through the night. Marcus froze, his instincts kicking in, his body tensing. Like a coiled spring, he turned slowly, his hands visible, palms open, a reflex honed from years of navigating situations where a wrong move could mean death. Hargrove stepped out of the cruiser, his flashlight blinding Marcus as he barked against the wall. Now Marcus complied, his jaw tight, his mind racing. He knew the drill, knew the profile he fit in Hargrove's eyes. "Officer, I'm just heading home," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. Hargrove ignored him, patting him down with rough, deliberate hands. When he found the baggie in Marcus's pocketa, baggie Marcus knew wasn't his, he felt a cold fury ignite in his chest. Well, what do we have here?" Hargrove said, holding up the baggie with a theatrical flourish. "Looks like you're in some trouble, boy." That word "boy" hit Marcus like a match to gasoline. He'd heard it before, in different voices, different places, but it always carried the same venom. Still, he kept his composure, his training kicking in. He knew, arguing now would only escalate things. Hargrove cuffed him, shoving him into the back of the cruiser with a force that was more about dominance than necessity. As the car pulled away, Marcus stared out the window, the city blurring past, his mind already working through what came next. Hargrove thought he'd just scored another easy win, but he had no idea who he'd just targeted. Marcus Kane wasn't just a man, he was a weapon, forged in the fires of covert operations, and he was about to turn this game upside down. At the precinct, Marcus sat in a holding cell, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and sweat. Hargrove had filed his report, claiming he'd stopped Marcus for suspicious behavior and found the drugs during a routine search. It was a story as old as the city itself, one that played out in precincts across the country. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the injustice of it all, not yet. He was thinking about Hargrove's smirk, the way he'd leaned in close and whispered, "You're going down, and no one's gonna care." That was Hargrove's first mistake. His second was underestimating the man he'd framed. Marcus had spent years cultivating a network, both in the shadows of the intelligence world and on the streets of Baltimore. He'd made friends in high places and low, people who owed him favors, people who trusted him. As he sat in that cell, he wasn't planning an escape, he was planning a reckoning. By morning, he was released on bail, thanks to a call from an old CIA contact who now worked as a federal prosecutor. The charges wouldn't stick, not with Marcus's record and connections, but that wasn't the point. Hargrove had crossed the line, and Marcus wasn't the type to let that slide. He'd seen too much corruption, too many men like Hargrove who used their badges as shields for their bigotry. This wasn't just about clearing his name, it was about dismantling Hargrove's world. Over the next week, Marcus went to work. He started with Hargrove's record, digging into public files and calling in favors from a hacker friend, Lena, who'd once worked for the NSA. Lena was a genius with a keyboard, her fingers dancing over code like a pianist, and she owed Marcus for saving her brother during a botched op in Yemen. What she found was a goldmine. Hargrove had a history of complaints, excessive force, racial profiling, evidence tampering, but none had ever stuck. The department protected its own, and Hargrove had a knack for skating by. Belina uncovered something else, a pattern of arrests, all black men, all with drugs found on them. All in cases where Hargrove was the sole officer involved. It was a playbook, and Marcus was the latest chapter. But there was more. Lena hacked into Hargrove's personal email, finding correspondence with a low-level dealer named Ricky Voss, who operated out of a rundown bar in Sandtown. The emails were coded, but Marcus's years in intelligence had taught him to read between the lines. Hargrove wasn't just planting drugs, he was buying them from Voss, using the dealer as his supplier for free. It was a slick operation, one that kept Hargrove's hands clean while ruining lives. Marcus felt his blood boil, but he pushed it down, channeling his anger into strategy. He needed proof, something airtight that would hold up in court, something that would bury Hargrove for good. Marcus decided to go straight to the source. He tracked down Voss at the bar, a grimy hole in the wall where the air smelled of cheap whiskey and regret. Voss was a wiry man with a nervous tic, his eyes darting around like he expected trouble at any moment. Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. He cornered Voss in the back alley, his presence alone, enough to make the dealer sweat. "I know about you and Hargrove," Marcus said, his voice low, lethal. "You're gonna help me take him down, or I'll make sure everyone knows you're his errand boy." Voss tried to play tough, but Marcus's stare-cold, unyielding pen in seconds. By the end of the night, Voss had agreed to wear a wire, to set up a meeting with Hargrove, where he'd hand over another batch of drugs. The sting was set for a Friday night, in an abandoned lot near the harbor. Marcus coordinated with Lena, who'd rigged a hidden camera in Voss's jacket, streaming live to a secure server. Marcus watched from a distance, perched on a rooftop with a clear view of the lot, his old CIA training kicking in as he scanned for variables. Hargrove arrived right on time, his cruiser pulling up with a casual arrogance. Voss played his part well, nervous but convincing, handing over a baggie, while muttering about the usual deal. Hargrove, oblivious to the trap, took the bait, pocketing the drugs and promising Voss another payout. It was all there: audio, video, undeniable evidence of Hargrove's corruption. But then came the first twist. As Hargrove turned to leave, a second car pulled up, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. Two men stepped out, both in plainclothes, but with the unmistakable bearing of cops. Marcus's gut tightened. These weren't just Hargrove's buddies, they were part of something bigger. One of them, a man with a scar across his cheek, grabbed Voss by the collar, snarling, "You talk to anyone about this?" Voss stammered, his fear real now, but before he could answer, the second man pulled a gun. Marcus cursed under his breath. This wasn't just a frame-up, it was a syndicate, and Hargrove was just a cog in a larger machine. Marcus had a split second to act. He couldn't let Voss die, not when he was the key to exposing Hargrove. Moving with the precision of a man who'd defused bombs under fire, Marcus rappelled down the side.